You're talking about that bothering you. I've been working as an upholsterer for 25 years and actually had my own business, quite most of that. And my wife would say, "Did you see?" When we're looking at some movie on TV, "Did you see what that woman was wearing?" I'd say, "What woman?" They had the cushion, the center cushion, upside down on the sofa. It's amazing what you pay attention to. And of course, being an upholsterer, this one bothers me because it's not over there in the same distance from that. Well, today we're talking about temptation because we want to make sure we think about this, understand it. We hear about it a lot. We hear from people and from the Bible, well, be careful, there's temptation out there. What does it mean? How's it going to look? How do I respond to it? What's the problem with temptation and so on? So let's talk about it a little bit, and we're going to take a look at how God has designed this realm. Remember, we're here for the purpose of fighting with God against Satan, his enemy, so that ultimately, at the end of time, God and Satan can be legally separated forevermore. So as we look at this and we say, well, what about the temptation? Well, the temptation is basically the pull that is used to be able to get you away from God. Let's take a look at 1 John chapter 2 and verse 16. For everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, the lust of the eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world. Now understand that things from the world, what the world thinks and what the world does, are straight from Satan's concepts and ideas planted in their minds. And you know that before you became a Christian, before you were baptized and born again, that you did things that you wouldn't even consider doing today because you thought they were right to do, or at least weren't wrong to do. And why not do them? Everybody else is doing them. This is the pull of the world. But God gives us some specific things here for us to look at. He gives us these particular concepts and ideas. It is the lust of the flesh, which means pleasure. Now look, if sin wasn't a pleasure immediately, we wouldn't do it. But ultimately, it destroys us. And God says, destroy yourself today or die to yourself. Do what I command, and ultimately you'll be rewarded. So there's a big difference in the way we are to look at it. Notice that the cravings of the flesh come in all different types and sizes. But what people want is that they want to be able to satisfy the desires that the world shows them and pulls at them. And all of us have roots of things that we have done in the past that continue to gnaw at us. And by the way, your temptation will be different from my temptation because it's not a cookie cutter type of a person that's cut out. You have different wants, different desires, different hopes, different dreams. And he's saying that if it is the lust of the flesh, it's because you want the pleasure. And the lust of the eye is that you want more. That this isn't enough, I want more. And the lust of the heart means that you're having pride. Now I'm going to read you something here real quick over in Genesis 3. And look at what happens with Eve there. and what she says and how she goes about it, and apply this particular thing we read here in 1 John about how God has designed temptation. Now look, God doesn't want you to be tempted, but He has made sure it's only going to come in those three ways. So you don't have to be surprised. Look at what happens here. Satan had told them, of course, you can eat that fruit. It won't make you die, and it'll make you as wise as God. Now look what she says. The woman saw the fruit. This is verse 7 if you're following in chapter 3. The woman saw the fruit of the tree was good for food. You see, pleasurable, probably pleasurable to the taste. Like, I don't know about fruit, but bacon, yeah, bacon would be something I'd really like, you know. And she says it's good for food and pleasing to the eye. Why can't I have that? Why is it that God's kept that away from me? When I can have all the other fruit, why not that one? See, so it's pleasing to the eye. And you will be like, and she says, and she would be, and also desirable for gaining wisdom. And because of that, she took it and she ate it. What did she want the wisdom for? Well, Satan had said she'd be like God. So she wanted this prideful wisdom that would make her. But the reality was, for her to do that meant death. For her to not do that meant life. And so he's telling us here that this is temptations. They're going to be in these three categories. They're going to be where you want pleasure, you want more, and it makes you prideful. And that helps you to be able to understand whether what you're concerned about is a lust that you're not supposed to go at. Remember, lust is something that you think about and dwell on, and because you dwell on it all the time, then you act. This particular thing, she was looking at the fruit. She continued to look at the fruit, continued to even think about it, thought about it. It continued to grow inside her. So when we see this, we can understand temptation so that we can learn how to use it. The cravings that you feel about temptation are up to you to control. Nobody else can. You're the only one in charge of who you are. You're the only one who can stop your cravings. Now, I just put this picture for the fun of it. I thought, okay, women, here's your picture of craving bonbons or whatever these are. I don't even know what these are. Bonbons with chocolate. What are those things with that you get frozen, you let them thaw out a little bit, and then you can eat like 600,000 of them? Cream puffs, yeah, there you go. And for the men, I didn't leave you out. I thought, well, men would be concerned about meat more than anything else. But it is a craving. And I don't know whether you have this issue or not. But for me, you know, there are certain cakes and pies and stuff that I can't, for me to eat just one slice or one part of it is difficult. And I'm not satisfied with that. I remember one time we went over to see my uncle, and I think he was an uncle. He could have been just something in the family, and you know, you always call them uncles. And he had 3 daughters and his wife. And my mother made this big chocolate cake. So he goes over there and he cuts this humongous wedge out of there. And he takes it and he takes it and puts it on a plate. And I'm thinking, my goodness, Uncle Dawson, look at the size piece of cake you got for yourself, you know. And then he said, that's for the girls. And he takes the rest of the cake and starts eating it. Okay, so and he wasn't a small man. And there are cravings you're going to have, but that is up to you to control. Remember, you must in every single thing say, thy will be done. When Christ was at the point he knew he was going to be tortured and crucified to death, he's sitting there praying and begging God to take this away from him, and then he steels himself. Meaning, he stopped being concerned about what he didn't want to have to do. And he accepted what was going to happen. He steels himself. He stands up and says, thy will be done, not my will. And this is how we control our cravings. The things, not just about food, but about men, if you're about women, or about affairs, or about wanting to get ahead, or wanting to amass a certain amount of wealth, or wherever it may be. And so you have to think about this and realize these temptations are straight from Satan, not from God. These are things that he is longing for you to fail and trip up. Now, the reason is because it may be harder for you to get back in with God. You know, if you ever done this, I don't know about you, but I when I was in my 30s, I really didn't care about God whatsoever, and I would just do whatever I wanted to do, and I was even kind of angry at God because he demanded me to do these things. And so I would be laying there in bed feeling guilty because I hadn't gone to church. And sooner or later, after many weeks, I didn't feel guilty anymore. So you see, the problem with temptation is it makes it where you don't do what you know you're supposed to do. And this is all Christianity is about training. Number one, take yourself out of it. Number two, put God as first. No matter what it may be. And so you're dealing, you're not married, or maybe you're married, and the relationship's not going that great, and here you're working with a lady at work, and she comes over and gives you papers all the time, and you watch the way she walks, and she comes over, starts paying attention to you, and then one day she puts her hand on your arm, and you have got to be in control of your own mind so that you don't go there and you're saying, thy will be done. I didn't say this was easy. This is something you learn. And as with all things, when you learn it, you understand it. So then we're going to do God's will and live forever. That's pretty interesting. Doing what God designed you to do is to follow him. And to follow him means that you have to decide that you're going to submit to him, be under his teaching, to be right before his eyes. And submission is never easy, folks. Because we think, well, we're good enough. In fact, some people in this world think that they're so smart and so capable that there isn't even a God. They don't need a God. They are God themselves. Now, I was watching some show called The Blue Planet. You know, you've probably seen it. And they had a little submarine thing, a little yellow thing. Okay, anyways, a little yellow thing, and it had gone down deep, deep into the ocean floor. And this particular part was real, real deep. And they go up to this point, and they look and they say, look at that. That's kind of weird. It looked like a bunch of mushrooms sitting around in a circle and into this, and they could see that something was coming out like steam, but it's underwater. You can't have steam underwater. So they said, let's go check it out, you know, and they go in there, and they go up in the middle of the mushroom-looking thing, And they tried to go down inside of it, and they could not. There was something holding them back. So they tested it, and it was a salt solution coming out of the middle of the earth. And here's God keeping the ocean 3.5% saline. And over there is a freshwater port somewhere. You know, the old captains knew where those were. And when they sail across the ocean, they stopped there and just could reach down with buckets and take on fresh water. And here's God holding that together, exactly 3.5% salt water. The air we breathe, your heart's a thumping away, and you don't even know how to make it thump or not thump. You breathe in oxygen, you expel carbon dioxide. Let me tell you something, folks. We can't be a God unto ourselves. And so we submit to Him and understand it is all about Him. So here's what you do. You fill your mind with God's Word, and then there's no room for lies. You'll recognize them. Somebody come and say this, yada, 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 or maybe somebody on TV, yada, yada, yada. And you say, that is a lie. I know better than that. I was listening to a guy the other day interview about evolution. And the guy said, well, you know, he says, don't you understand this happens over eons of time, and it's just incremental little changes that makes a human come about? How do you do that? You know, there's a little membrane, small membrane, between what is septic in your body and what is proper in your body. And if that membrane is nicked, you're going to die. Simple as that. Because that septic stuff comes into your body and destroys it. Now, how do you keep the septic part separate from everything else? How did that evolve? How did you evolve from a cold-blooded animal like a fish into a warm-blooded person like you? See, there's just no way. There's not enough time ever to be able to accomplish that. And let me tell you something. No mutation ever benefited the host. So you have to understand that. You have to be able to say, oh, that's a lie, I can see that. That's what the world says, but it's not the truth and not what God says. So then, when we come up to that same temptation again, we say, wait a minute. I mean, we got this mental hang going out there. No way, Jose, I'm not going to do that. I know better. I know what God has commanded of me. And I want to live with Him forever. Amen? Amen. This is exactly what we want to do. I was watching my father was a safety representative in Houston Lighting and Power Company. And he'd come up as a German all the way through. And his job at that time was to remind the men what to do so they wouldn't get electrocuted. And so they had this picture of a train. And the train, you couldn't see the engines. Oh, their name was caboose. We don't even have cabooses anymore. But you couldn't see the engines, and you see there's this way you could walk through there between these two couplings, and you didn't have to go all the way around. But what you didn't know was whether they had already started backing up. And when they start backing up, way down there it goes boom, 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 boom. That force comes all the way down until it gets to you. And so somebody's standing there waving a red flag for this guy for him to be able to see these are red flags. Don't do that. Don't put yourself in danger. And here's what God says about temptation. It's only going to be 3 ways. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, lust of the heart. Period. Recognize it, understand it, and so that you can live properly with it. Now, the second point is in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, where Paul gives us this insight from God about how we're to live and think and to be. And he tells us in chapter 10, verse 13, no temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. Did you hear that? Everyone is tempted the same. That doesn't mean that your temptation for you is a temptation for me. And a temptation for me is a temptation for you. Because we think differently and we have different characteristics. God has designed each person differently. But the temptations are always the same. Always going to be pleasure, more, and pride. Okay? Always. And so when we're tempted this way, we have to understand this is common. This is normal. Look what this says. For we do not have a high priest, this time of Christ, who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet without sin. And he tells us there is a way you'll be tempted, and you're always going to be tempted, each one of you, because that is the whole focus of Satan. What does he want? He wants a whole world that doesn't care about God. He wants everybody to walk away from God, and he wins. However, there was one man who was tempted just like you and me, but never sinned. And so Satan has failed. And because of that, that sacrifice is in the sanctuary of God, sitting on the right hand of God, and all we have to do is accept it and use it as he has commanded. So look how fortunate we are. And your life is never harder than others. Oh, yeah, I know you see all these pretty people who are running around with money and everything, and they're just having a blast. Let me tell you something. They're not having a blast. They're following the temptations of Satan. And they're going to have a harder life than you. But the things that tempt you, tempt others in the same way. You've got to understand that it is up to you to stay strong. God's not going to come back and tug on you and say, hey, come on, aren't you paying attention? His word is here. Does he force it on you? No. Why? Because he wants you to love him yourself. He doesn't want you to be forced into it. Now, are there going to be some ramifications? Oh, yeah. Are you going to be punished? Yeah. But that's down the road. Maybe I'll think about that later. Don't let anything hold you back from what is right to do before God, what you want, but it has to be as within the parameters of God. Just like Jesus said, not my will, but thy will be done. You have to remember who you are, whose you are, and how you got there. So that you're not damaging yourself. And let's talk about these three things, because these are really a problem to people. Depression. Depression is something that overcomes you to a degree. And the more you think about it, the deeper in depression you go. Now notice the hand. You see the guy's hand? His hand's here on his side like this, like he's kind of massaging himself because he's so upset and unhappy with his condition. Depression is looking at yourself. So what do you have to do to stop depression? You have to stop looking at yourself and look around at the world. Help people read the Word of God. Understand there's more to this life than your problems. And your problems are there for you to go through and show the glory of God. Not for you to have a problem, ask God to take it away. He takes it away. Well, guess what? More problems will come. The reality is, the way you go through those, you'll not be, because you're successful, you'll not have that problem as much later. Later on, you say, oh, that? Man, I've already taken care of that. That's no problem to me. I'm not concerned about that. I'm faithful. I'm too faithful to God. I'm going to do what He said. And despair, notice where the hand goes. Despair, oh my goodness. She can't even look at the world. It's gotten even worse. She's gotten to the point where she is just consumed with whatever is going on in her life. And she thinks there's no way out. What did God say in this verse? He's made sure you have a way out. He's made sure so that you can be able to overcome the temptation. You don't have to fall to that. And then worry. Notice where the hands are now. Because worry is where you're pondering the situation. Is it worry or is it something else? Now let me give you a definition of worry. You ready? Worry is assuming responsibility God never intended you to have. Are we going to be bombed tomorrow? Okay, let me tell you something. You don't have that, the ability to change that. Is the air going to be clean enough for me to be able to breathe and stay alive? You don't have the ability. It doesn't mean you put your head in your barbecue pit, with a fire going. But you worry is not your business to be involved in. Despair is not your business to be living there. Depression is not your business to be living there. Those are from Satan, not from God. And he is doing his best, Satan is, to tempt you into pain and misery. Listen, the only thing that Satan can give you is pain, misery, destruction, disease, and death. All that's from him. That's not from God. God gives you life, happiness, peace, and prosperity. Prosperity in your marriage, where you and your wife are doing well together, you're in love with each other, you're concerned about each other, you're thinking about each other's needs, and you're taking care of those needs and whatever it is that they have. That's a prosperous marriage. You've got to understand that people who understand these problems won't fall into them because they know their God is stronger than that. And they know they've got a way out. If you're depressed, what's the way out? Wake up. Wake up. Count your blessings. Start listing all the things that are great in your life. Man, I had food to eat. I had a house over my head. I got a car. I got a car. I got a run. Don't sit there and look at all the things bad about your life. But rather, be excited about life. Don't take the bait of Satan, which is what temptation is all about. But rather, Allow God to show you the way out and take it. If all you can think about is the temptation, then you'll take it just like Eve did and eat of it. And once she ate of it, she could no longer be the same. You've got to build up a tolerance to Satan's ways. And he constantly discusses this in your mind. It comes to you as thoughts. I remember when I was a little kid, I don't know, about 15, 16, I was never little. Okay. Something happened when I turned 7. Anyway, when I was a kid in high school, and I'm walking through, and here goes a kid in front of me, and he has red hair, the reddish hair you can imagine, and freckles all over his face and body. And the idea came to me, oh, maybe he'll get a better body when he's recreated, you know. And I thought, where is that thought coming from? I don't believe that. I know better. Big difference between my 15 and 30, okay? I understand. Fortunately, God allowed me to live long enough to come back to Him. But don't take the bait of Satan. You know what you need to catch a fish? All you need is something shiny and interesting and precious and a hook. And you can catch a fish. So you have to be careful. Now tonight we're talking about mindset. Success, if you're going to go to heaven, is not an accident. It's a mindset. We'll talk about that tonight. How to think, how to place yourself, how to encourage yourself, how to be excited about what you do, and where you're going. We'll talk about that tonight. Now let's look at the last point. Temptations are not from God. Turn over to James chapter 1. And now, you wonder why is James all the way back here at the back of the book and back of the Bible? Well, I'll tell you. Martin Luther didn't like the book of James. And so he stuck it all the way back there. He loved the book of Romans. But he didn't like the book of James because the book of James says you're not saved by faith alone. You have to have some action going with it. And so it's all the way at the back. Well, that's kind of interesting tidbit. I know that's worthless information to you maybe, but I find it interesting. Chapter 1, verses 13 through 17. Yeah, look what it says. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when by his own evil desires he is dragged away and enticed. Then, after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from God, from above. And now look what he's saying here. Don't take the bait because you'll be dragged away by evil desires. It is not because Satan will drag you, but your own evil desires will pull you in that way. There are evil desires and there are godly desires. And the purpose of them is you have to train yourself to be full of the godly desires and to not be pulled to the evil ones. So, what does this mean? The evil desires lead to sin. What is sin? Well, sin is separation from God. When you sin, you become an enemy of God. And ultimately, when you die, it means you will never be with God. And so it is ultimately death. And look how simple this picture is. But understand, it's not simple when it's going on in your mind. It has to be something you fully understand. Knowledge plus understanding is what brings forth wisdom. Without the knowledge, you don't know whether you're acting right or not. Without the understanding, you can't apply it to this situation you're in. And without that, the knowledge and understanding, how in the world are you going to be wise before God? So you understand the importance of studying the Word of God, so you fully know what He has said. This is the way to go. Here it is, and He puts a light to your path. Now, can you still look over there? Yeah. Look at Samson, who was created specifically to kill all the Philistines who were the enemy of Israel. That was his whole purpose, go out there and kill them all. He had the strength to do it. Nobody could overtake him. But instead he fell in love with their women. Ultimately his eyes were put out. Oh yeah, he pushed over some pillars and killed a few of them, but not like he was supposed to. What about Solomon, the wisest man in the world? He wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, and in the book of Ecclesiastes, we see him following man's desires. Wherever man's desires are, wherever their laws is, he's going to follow it. And he said it brought him nothing but meaninglessness and vanity. Worthless was his life. Did he understand that he needed to follow God? Yes, sure, because at the end of Ecclesiastes, he said there's only one whole reason you're here, and that's to follow God and keep His commandments. Did he do it? No. In fact, we find out in the first king, he went and started worshiping foreign gods like Molech, where they would gather and they worry about the crops and everything, and so they try to get this god to give them some assurance that they're going to have good crops, and so the priest would be starting a fire inside, and Molech was kind of like had a dog's head or whatever, and he had hands out like this, and the hands would start to glow red, and they go throughout the crowd and they grab a baby, and when the woman started screaming, "Not my baby!" everybody started wailing, and they take that baby and throw it on these molten hands that would fry it to death. Solomon, who had the knowledge and the understanding, and was the wisest man on earth, succumbed to the temptations of Satan. So this is nothing new. And for you, you must be aware of it so that you can fight it and know that all good things, all perfect things are from God. So what do? You focus on the good and perfect things. And you recognize those others and keep them back from you. So that you can be the kind of man or woman who will be able to walk into heaven covered with the blood of Christ. And God can say, "Welcome home, my good and faithful servant." So don't be tempted. Oh, that sounds so easy, doesn't it? But it isn't easy, because temptation is out there. The world is passing away with its lusts, but he who does God's will remain forever. forever and ever. Okay, we talked a while ago about what Satan does, what he gives. What does God give? The life. So don't follow the death, follow the life. Because you will be tempted. Whoops, sorry about that. You will be tempted. Let's come back to me. Please. Please. I thought it was harder than that. And that way you won't be tempted to fail like people who are of the world and do not pay attention to God. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to fix that. I don't think I have another post, but